Hello, ladies. Welcome to our Lab 3 RED Review Program meeting. This RED program synchronized with Lab 3 because it is RED program number 130. So it's synchronized with Lab 3 of this Asume year in Apparatus 507. We're beginning an apparatus, which is really exciting. I don't know if you guys have sensed these subtle changes. For me, I have felt them inside and out as well, just in the way things are going and unfolding, and of course, all these global events that we are seeing happening. So we're gonna locate ourselves in Calendaria right here in the first day of the NO cardinality, day 9 of Lab 3, right? So today is the 10th of February. Solar day 739294. Okay. So yeah, I think this was a really good program. It was really deep. They always are.
I think I made a mistake.
Yeah?
I've never seen this 130. I made my question on 129.
That's okay.
Yeah.
The thing is,
I didn't understand your questions, Gabi. That's why.
I've never seen this one.
oh, yeah, it's because we didn't have a meeting for Lab 2.
Okay.
For the 129, we didn't have a meeting for that.
But you have both written. You have both written, 129 and I never seen
yes.
It was
Yeah.
very close after each other. You worked hard in a short time. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I did them
right,
both in
yeah.
like 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought maybe you would go through both of those documents, but
Yeah, I wanted this meeting, like maybe we could go through both, but I don't know. I was just like, okay, whatever questions you guys have, we can do that because we couldn't go through both, like all of them, but we could. I mean, it's no problem. So with Gavi's notes and Marjolaine's notes, we can go over both, so that's fine. But here I just wanted to show the lab, right? We're already in Lab 3 really quickly. January seemed to be quite slow for me, and then February is just like running. So we're gonna run to the questions. Okay, so based on this is Marjolaine's notes. 2 questions. The first one is the second paragraph on page 2. But the evolution is solar, and these are instances where we don't have concepts, socially speaking, because if the antenna does not provide them, they will not become part of the written past. Because what we are used to is the existence of a documented past that we consult. And the idea of knowledge, conocimiento, conceives as a past that has already occurred, which for us at LGC happens when the 4th cardinality has a reference content. So, to develop social consciousness, we must be able to isolate the personal consciousness. When I say isolate, I mean isolating it in the spatial-temporal consciousness processor, not isolating it in the sense of denying it. It means not demanding more from the personal consciousness that its reach allows, because the digital consciousness operates at the limits, while the analog consciousness operates within the scopes. That's where the complementation comes in. So, do you have a specific question or just points where we want to stop here, Marjolaine?
I understood everything of this 130 except this alinea. I think it's an error in my brain. So these 2 parts I couldn't digest. And,
okay.
Me,
okay.
She said something about the cone and the foundation, about the antenna, and maybe we can start about isolation.
Okay.
What she meant by that.
Maybe I can just go over this whole paragraph slowly, okay? So we're gonna go part by part. The first part is the evolution is solar. And these are instances where we don't have concepts socially speaking, because if the antenna does not provide them in the present, they will not become part of the written past. This means, okay, you know, Alejandra always makes emphasis on the fact that everything that's going on right now has to do with the evolution of Sol, right? We
Yes.
are contents inside there. There are possibilities and opportunities open for the human species in this evolution, but it is Sol, the star, going through this whole process, right? So because when we talk about solar consciousness, we're going to be talking about the subatomic instance. She's saying that we don't have these concepts, socially speaking, right? Because socially, society is based on linearity and raw, right? And these very concrete and analogic concepts. So socially speaking, we do not have these concepts to create new meanings or understandings of the things that are happening, right? So people are going to be making interpretations or just creating their own arguments, depending on the scopes that each particular person has, right? And that later, that's going to become a social argument, right? Once these these particularities begin to argument whatever's going on, then later it becomes part of the masses. It later becomes social. But for now, like, this is something that is available for everybody. That's why she mentions here the antenna. She says, socially speaking, because if the antenna does not provide them in the present, what does that mean? If our antennas are not picking up these things that are happening within, you know, our environment, because we're just either not interested, or we don't have the scope, or we're just distracted in other stuff, we're not going to be creating we're not going to be picking up the signals. We're not going to be creating the concepts, and therefore we're not going to be able to argument the things that are happening more objectively. We're going to be argumenting them in the more symbolic area, right? Because that's all there is, socially speaking, because the antennas are not picking up these signals, and they're not, you know, tuned into the signal. So if the antenna does not provide these concepts in the present, because of course the antenna works in time zero, works in real time, right? Picking up these signals, and then we later codify these signals, we create the concepts, we create the meanings, we create the understandings. If the antenna does not provide them in the present, they will not become part of the written past. Of course, they will not be part of the written past because we haven't picked them up. If the antenna is not active and tuning into these signals, then of course, these concepts will not be created, these understandings will not be created, and of course, they will not be part of the past, right? So, because what we are used to, socially speaking, right, is the existence of a documented past that we consult. So, if these concepts, like for us, for example, we have been working with these concepts for a while now, right? So for us, particularly speaking, some of these concepts are already part of our documented past, right? In these previous years that we have been working with these concepts are installed in those documents, in those years that we are now standing on, right? So for now, for us, those arguments are part of the documented past for us, but not for society, right? So, and then, okay, the next one says, and the idea of knowledge, conocimiento, right? Cone foundation, conceives a past that has already occurred. This is the social concept of knowledge, or conocimiento. It is a conception of a past that already has occurred. That's what people interpret as knowledge, right? Something that has occurred, it's in the past. But for us, that is something that is alive. That is something that is happening in the present constantly, where the cone is receiving these signals that are going on, right, in our environment. And the C note in the musical notes, that is like the orchestra director, right? That is like the one that is saying, okay, I am receiving these new things. I need to codify them, right? I need to order them, because the first thing, the way we receive these in the first instance is like unordered, right? We just receive things without any order. Then we have to order those things. Once they're ordered, in that process, that's going to affect, of course, our foundation. This is part of what the concept of conocimiento in LGC is, right? This dynamic process that is going on all the time in the re-axis. So in the social idea of conocimiento, it is a past that we consult that has already occurred. But when we transfer that into LGC, it means that there's a fourth cardinality included, right? When the fourth cardinality is included, it means like that the octave is complete and it's something that we can document. And then we have the on. Remember the on note in the musical notes? It's in the lower right. Okay, Alejandra relates that note to the memories of the container, right? So once, like what we were saying earlier, once something that is going on in our environment and everybody starts to argument the thing that is happening, along, of course, with all the modifications in the ionosphere, right? Because this is something Ale says also, that the improvement of the solar code has to, like, it doesn't mean that our personal lives are going to improve. It means that collectively we're going to be having access to a great, like, more intelligence, because the ionosphere itself has improved. That is like the improvement of the solar code means that all of us are going to be having access to more like we're going to become a little more intelligent. So we don't know how this is going to unfold. It may be quite symbolic, or maybe we're going to be developing slowly the ability to interpret everything and describe the things that happen to us and what happens in our environment in a more technical and objective way, instead of taking the symbolic route, right? And this is something that reality itself and the social consciousness have to figure out how to do that in the most elegant way, so that this happens, right? So that people choose objectivity and a more technical approach in the description and the creation of arguments than the symbolic route, because the symbolic route is just not going to help the progress of the solar code, right? So so to develop social consciousness, we must be able to isolate the personal consciousness. Sorry, to develop solar consciousness, we must be able to isolate the personal consciousness. This is nothing new. She has been speaking about this for years. And we can remember this, like in the beginning of LGC, how Alejandra didn't even talk about humans. Like she didn't talk about humans. She didn't talk about the earth or the sun or the solar system, nothing. It was all universal basis, right? It was like a different range of consciousness that didn't yet touch the human, right? The thing is that this doesn't mean, like, some people usually take this the wrong way, like, oh, I'm not important, or la la la. It is not like that. It is simply that humans belong to a different range. We belong to a different dimension, a different level, right? So if we want to develop solar consciousness, and that is like the main issue, that is like the main question. That is the main question we have to ask ourselves. Do I really want to develop solar consciousness? Because to do that, it means that I have the ability to generate an impersonal identity, where I am not a human, I am not Denise, I am developing a solar identity. And that means at a subatomic level. Humans don't exist. Like at a subatomic level, there are no humans yet. We are particles. Right? So this is like something that we've said in many different ways along these years. And it's a very difficult thing to do because because of the place we come from, the configuration we come from as humans, and all the contamination and interference that we have been just experimenting. And not just that, but all of that has become part of our identity and our code. So that's why it's so hard for us to change these interpretations about ourselves, right? Because they have been injected in our code and our identities. So it's really hard to deconstruct that, because in order for us to deconstruct these things, we have to hold on to the nothingness. Because identity is something that holds our, we could say, psychology together, our understanding of ourselves and the world together. So the breakage of our identity according to the past, that's very like it could be very traumatic if we don't have other concepts of other instances developed. But if I do have these concepts developed, then when the breakage of the identity comes, I can argument and I can understand and I can say, okay, this is what's going on. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. I'm not dying. It is just a change in the codification of my identity. And this is a way where I can amplify that identity, right? And I can construct identity at other levels and not just constrain myself in an analogic identity, because that's where people get suffocated. It is as if I only have an analogic identity, imagine now that we know that there are other levels, right? Imagine if I wanted to put all of those levels inside the analogic. Of course, people feel suffocated, they feel trapped, they feel confused, they don't know what's going on. All these things that we see happening all around us, it's because of that, because the only identity they have is analogic. And there is no understanding of the fact that we are multidimensional beings. There's no understanding of the fact that there's a solar consciousness going through an evolutionary process. All these things are concepts. These are concepts that we already have, and these are concepts that we're going to base ourselves upon when the shifts and the changes inside us occur. We are going to know what's going on. Now imagine going through all of these things without these concepts. Of course, people are troubled and they are traumatized, right? Even if they're not going through situations like physical traumatic situations, like I have seen in some of my friends and people, they're going through a very, very hard time internally, even though all of their surroundings is fine, like their lives are fine. They're just going through a lot of things. So for me, I was like, yes, that like, I can understand what's going on to like inside my head. I was like, oh, you need solar consciousness, you need solar concepts. But I couldn't say that because I have to respect their own scope. And I know that if I said that, I could, do more harm than help. And I have to allow them to find their own meaning and create their own arguments in their own scope without interfering. But yeah, so that is the thing with the identity, right? And the isolation part is part of that. I am a human here in this instance, but that's not all I am. So being able to separate myself, removing myself from the equation when we're talking about space-temporal structures, when we're talking about metrics, when we're talking about solar dates, the calendar, all these structural concepts that we should know the difference by now, that are not human. When we're talking about structural concepts, we should know by now that it's not about me. It's about the development of my particularity at a different level that has to do with the solar identity, with an impersonal subatomic identity. That's where the isolation part comes, right? But then she says, I mean isolating it in the spatial temporal consciousness processor, right? At the level of the processor, not isolating it in the sense of denying it. This means that all the signals I receive, they don't all have to do with me. These concepts that we are developing should tell me the difference when it has to do with me and when it has to do with a signal that is purely structural, where it has to do with something that's going to amplify or include something in my impersonal identity. That's why she focuses on the processor part. The processor needs to be operated by a consciousness, right? And it needs to be observed so that it can do the processing part better, so that these signals are processed better. Now imagine if this processor is only operated by an analogic identity. Now that person is not going to have a good time. The code is not going to be very good in their lives, and they're going to be very confused, and they're going to be very troubled because they're processing all the signals that we receive. We are antennas, and we're receiving all kinds of signals from all kinds of places and all kinds of dimensions. I imagine processing that from one place. That's going to be a very hard time for that person, for that analogic identity. That is why it's so important for us to develop an impersonal identity where we are able to process signals at different levels. That is the isolation part. Separation, being able to differentiate one thing from the other, because if not, we're just going to be receiving all these signals and making a big mess and confusion of the concepts because I'm not able to separate myself, my personal identity. I'm not able to separate myself from the solar identity. This is very hard. We're going to have a hard time doing this, and we have time to continue to do this. But like, even if I am not, like, if I'm not saying like, oh, I have a really good impersonal consciousness, like, I don't want to say that, but at least I can say that I can be aware of the fact that when I am receiving a signal or something that's coming, that I receive as an antenna in the antenna part, I can be aware of the fact that I can receive it at a personal level or at an impersonal level. Like, at least I can do that. That's like where I can start to separate, just observing, just observing where my focus is, and not just receiving things and leaving the processor to process through the memory. And, and if the processor processes through the memory, then it's just going to use the reactives. It's going to use just old documents. It's not going to be, we're not going to be able to receive the signal in its pure state because there's new things coming all the time. But if I'm contaminating them and interpreting them with my personal identity, then it's not going to be new at all. I'm going to be associating all these new things with all things, and they're not going to be new anymore, and they're not going to do me any good. They're going to disrupt me. They're going to confuse me. I'm going to be more and more confused instead of having more and more clarity, right? So I know that's the hard part is because we love to be humans. We love our human identity, and also the ego, right? Of, oh, I'm so important. I am important because I am aware of myself. I am aware of the universe. I am important, yes. But that's not all I am, right? I am more than that. I am, right now, there's a possibility to develop a solar identity. And that's at a different level. But the subatomic instance is very different. Like, the logic of the subatomic is very different from what we're accustomed. So that's why it's very hard for us to do that separation, that isolation, the removal of myself from the observation, so I can become more objectively, a more objective observer of the things that happen, and not necessarily be like, oh, this happened to me. Oh, it has to do with me. It has to do with me. The first thing that I want to do there remove myself. Observe the thing objectively. Remove yourself. Then later in the last part of that process, I can figure out how I come into the equation. But that's like the last thing I do. It's not the first thing I do. Like, oh, the solar day is this. Oh, this is my birthday, and this is my date, and this is me, and this is me, and this is me. That's not good. That's gonna be contamination of the signal. That is the last thing I do. And I don't even necessarily have to do that. It's not even necessary to include myself in the equation. Not always. So that's the isolation situation. So the next
Thank
part
you.
says, it means not demanding more from the personal consciousness than its reach allows, because the digital consciousness operates at the limits while the analog consciousness operates within the scopes. That's where complementation comes in, right? So digital consciousness is what we've been talking about. It is aligned to what we were saying about impersonal identity, right? It is a consciousness that operates at a different level than the analogic. The digital consciousness operates at the limits while the analog consciousness operates within the scopes. Now, if these two things complement each other, we're going to be having a good time. We're going to be having a lot of synchronicity. We're going to have a lot of clarity, because everything is going to be in its rightful place, right? Understanding that, okay, if my digital identity works within the limits, and over here, my personal identity in the analog instance is working in the scopes, then they're working together. I work in the scopes, and then I have a communication at night, right? I have a communication and be like, okay, this is what's going on. And then the digital identity works within the limits and sees how it can amplify those limits, right? But we can only do that if we know how to work within our scopes, our true scopes. That's another difficult thing that humans have, that it's very hard for us to find or understand or respect our own limits, right? There's a lot of confusion there as well. Like, where are my true scopes? Or just thinking that I have more scope than what I actually have. But finding my true scope is very important and like very good. It is a very, very good thing, because no scope is less important than the other. Like, it doesn't matter if Alejandra has this amazing scope and I have a smaller scope than Alejandra. It doesn't really matter, because my scope, it doesn't matter the size of it. If I know how to work inside it, I'm going to be in the synchronized flow of the surrounding, the place I live in. If I respect that, and we've spoken about this before, year after year, if I do work within my scope and I respect my limits, because limits mean that, like, I can work within a range, right? Like a little box, I can work within that, and I can do so many things with my scope, so many things. And once I do that, like once I know my scope really well, the entorno reads that, and it's like, okay, you know your scope really well. Now we can amplify it a little bit for you, so you can have new things and learn new things. Okay, then year after year, you're gonna find yourself with little specks of new things in your scope. You're gonna be finding new stuff there. But that's only if we respect the limits of our own scopes, if we don't confuse the digital with the anatomic. If we confuse the digital with the anatomic, it means that we are always working at our limit. And that's going to generate a lot of stress, frustration. It's going to do the opposite than if we're working within our scope. But finding limits, finding our own limits, and then finding the other person's limits and respecting that. Because if I can't respect my own limits, if I can't even find them, then of course I'm not going to be able to have good relationships with anybody, because I am not in the place where I really am. Like my mind is not connected to my feet. My feet are somewhere else and my mind is somewhere else, and everything is always like that, right? So people can't communicate with me because I don't even know where I am, and I can't communicate with people because I don't know where I am. So my relationships can't improve. So many problems come if I am not in the rightful place of my own scope. Right? I was telling Gavi and Molly that the construction began, so you're gonna hear these noises, but I hope it's not too disturbing. Okay, anybody want to say anything about that? Come on, help me out here.
Great explanation. Very clear. Thank you.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
Denise, do we have, I think we have both. We have the analog and we have the digital. We
Yeah.
function, the personal identity is working on the analog, and the impersonal, it's new, is the digital. And she's very clear, this the third lab, about this isolation, about this digital identity. And it's really more clear, but also a little bit confronting.
Very
Because it's
confronting.
not-
Very much so, yes.
A little bit confusing as well, because we know the past. That's what she's saying. The whole this 130 is about, we know about the past, about the history, about our library, but now we have a new function with our processor. And that's the digital identity. I think you explained it very well, but it's a lot. It's really a lot.
I think it looks like a lot, maybe, because I am explaining the same thing from different perspectives. But it is the central point of this was the separation, right? The separating myself, separating, being able to differentiate the multi-dimensions that conform us as these beings, right? And the fact that we have an aspect that's being activated, or at least conscious, like we're becoming aware of this aspect that maybe other humans in the past had, but they were not conscious of it, right? Maybe other humans did have it. Doesn't mean that they didn't. The thing is that now we're becoming aware of this, and it is as if we were rewriting every understanding we had about ourselves from the past. And everything is so new because this only began, of course, in 2012, and everything that we are learning and all the functions that the humans are having enabled as first as possibilities, and then according to each of our scopes, enabled, right? These new functions, these new understandings, and all these things. Of course, it's going to depend on our scopes, but it is available, and the only difference here is that we are becoming aware of that. When the improvement of the solar code is executed, which I think this is the apparatus where that's going to happen, a lot of things are going to improve. Like she said about the Peruvians, right? She says, I expect this tremendous evolution for Peruvian people. It's just that it's going to be unconscious. They're not going to be aware of what's going on. They're just going to be consuming that improvement from the solar code directly, because it's 5 and 1. So it's like the administration directly of the reception. It is like the modulation, direct modulation of the new solar code. Now, we have said this a lot of times, and Ale too, before. Some are gonna build a bridge, some are just gonna cross it, right? This was available for everybody. Some are not interested, some are not, some are distracted, etc. But is the becoming aware of these things that is so exciting, and so, like Ale always says, like this is a luxury to be aware and to have all these concepts and to have all these metrics and to have all these instruments and support system to be able to get through this whole thing without, you know, going crazy in the process or dying in the process or just having a really hard and bad time. Like this example of one of my really, really good friends, I love her dearly. She's having a really hard time. And she's like just really troubled and confused because she's just receiving all these things, but her processor is not prepared for receiving all of these things. She never built any of the concepts. She never, you know, worked on her so she's receiving all these things or these influences and she's very troubled. Like her mind is troubled. So yeah, we're gonna see many different ways in which people are gonna be receiving these changes, and maybe a lot of people are not gonna be able to tolerate them. Hopefully, we don't lose many people because, like we've said before, the better the quality of the solar code, the more elegant the transition and the less violent, right? And the less people that are gonna have to go from this place. Right? So that's going to depend on the quality of the solar code. So if the solar code, the quality of the solar code is really good, then people are going to be able to digest, maybe even if they're having a hard time digesting it, but they're going to be able to digest it in some kind of way. It doesn't matter how, but digest it and argument themselves what's going on to themselves. So hopefully that is the way that things go, because it's going to mean that the solar code is doing, the solar consciousness is doing a really good job codifying and going through this thesis and this exam to go into, imagine that. I mean, every time I hear Ale talk about this, or even I hear myself talking about this, like the evolution of a star. What? What? We are like, we are riding that wave. And we are aware of that, and it's happening. And sometimes I also think, I'm like, if people from the outside hear us speak about these things, they're gonna think we're insane, you know? So yeah, the resonance part of the thing is so like, that is like the best protection and filter, because there is also another person, a lady, that she kind of listened, like she knows who Ale is, but she never really followed the process, right? She doesn't have resonance. So she was saying, oh yeah, I can never listen to the red programs. Like, I don't understand anything. And I'm like, yeah, well, you know, it is what it is. Like, there's nothing we can do about that. Like, if there's no resonance, then there's not going to be any construction or articulation of meaning if there's no resonance, and there's nothing we can do about that. So then we have the people that don't have resonance and they just walk away. And then we have the people that enter into the counter resonance, right? Which is more dangerous because they can use this to their own benefit and to manipulate others, which is, you know, a bad thing. But I mean, anything can happen, you know? It is the space-temporal adventure and it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, we are inside kind of like a pod where we are witnessing the evolution of a solar consciousness, of a stellar consciousness, in this case, sun, which is the name that we call our star. And this part that we have talked about a lot, that has to do with the construction of the identity, of the belonging to this solar system, right? Which is so very important as well. That's also a concept that allows us and will help us to get through this. Because if I have no belonging to this space, to this star, to this solar system, to this species, then I'm not going to be caring much about anything. I'm just somebody that wants to have a nice experience, right? Coming directly from the primary unfoldment, where I just want to feel, and everything is based on feeling and experimenting. That's okay, that's fine, right? The thing is that we're going to be seeing how these changes, these structural changes in the entorno, in the container, are going to be affecting us as contents, right? And the demand now is that we are interested a little bit, even if it's a little bit, and in some kind of way, in how the entorno works and how the entorno allows me to be projected and have a life inside here, It's so pretty. It's so nice, right? To hear all of that.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
We're just here silent until you go
I know.
speaking again, and then we listen. It's
Amazing.
great, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. I think about that all the time. And I like even just thinking about that, it's like, what is even going on? Like, is this real? Is this really happening? Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, like this is a question, right, for you guys. Have you felt like, did you feel the shift at all from apparatus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it was
Oh.
really. And I'm still like, okay, what is what is happening? Oh, yeah. It's a
Mm,
completely
yeah.
from the 1st of January.
Right?
Mhm.
From the 1st of January, it's so crazy. It is like
Yeah.
for me, like room, like more room, and as if I have more room, but there's there's things in that room that I have to see what they are. That's how I
Mm.
feel.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Like more room everywhere.
Mm.
And for some, that's going to be the opposite. It's going to be more tight.
Mm.
And I have seen that. And in some people, it's tighter. Like another friend, a really good friend of mine, different one. She had like a lot of trouble in her job. She had to use all of her savings, and she has a daughter. And from last year, she was like, she was doing really good in her job and money wise and everything. To this year, it was like immediately, like in the beginning of the year, like tight in a really tight box. So when she was just telling me, because I hadn't seen her in a long time, I was just like, wow, this is just so precise. And she is a person, she's very like, how can I say it? Like, she tends to overflow a lot. And this is not a punishment. This is what she needed. More contained, like a smaller area where she is more contained and more tight, but she's doing really well. She's doing really well in that reduction of space, because it's what she needed. And some of us maybe needed more room. So it is like this scan that the environment, that the entorno did for all of us it's going to provide us with exactly what we need, right? And of course, the entorno is going to know a lot better what we need than ourselves. We only do our part, right? In that communication at night, living really close to our defect line, working on our defects so we can be creating more virtues, locating ourselves like as much as we can, where we are, where we're not, what we can do, what we can't do, respecting our limits, all of these things, the isolation, the separation. And if we do that really well, then the environment's going to be like, if we read ourselves really well, the entorno is going to be able to read us very well, and it's going to be able to provide exactly what we need. So this is another quality that my friend has. She is very transparent. She's very honest with herself, with others. She's very open, right? So I don't see what is happening to her as a punishment, but as a really good reading of the environment of what she needed. And she's doing really well, right? So this is really cool too, the learning to map myself really well. So now that we are in the first 11 laps, right, of Calendaria, that's what it's going to be about. Okay, I'm going to be receiving. This is a very important first 11 laps, because it is the Asume year of the apparatus. So I'm going to be receiving from the whole apparatus. I'm going to be receiving in my local area, right? My internal. So from this lab, from 1st to the 11, I'm going to be receiving all these new things, right? And then second 11 labs, we're going to be interacting with each other. That's why the gathering is in June. We're going to be seeing how everybody has received this new apparatus. So it gets exciting, right? It gets exciting because no one can escape these changes, because these changes have been created at a subatomic level, right? We cannot escape them. And they have been created based on the solar consciousness. So the solar consciousness is now in charge. these changes, these adjustments and these improvements are coming from the solar consciousness. The interferences are slowly losing the grip they had on the solar code. They're slowly losing it. And the solar consciousness is gaining more and more and more, right? So this is a very exciting time to be alive, especially with these concepts created and, you know, being able to observe these things from this amazing perspective.
Beautiful.
It is like watching from a helicopter, you know, what's going on down there. It's like having a really broad perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where did that come from? I don't know what I was originally saying, but let's move to Gavi's questions, which are that I think that's a really good synchro because Marjolaine focused on 130 and you focused on 129. So it's going to be really good. Okay, first question from Gabi. Read. The transition will be more elegant because the future aspect before the present is executed restructures the past, meaning that it nourishes the interpreter and updates the interpretation, which is online. So the logical circuit that is applied is new, 2025. This is wonderful, right? Do you want to say something like about it, Gabi?
No, only that you expanded some more.
Okay, so it is what we were saying about the elegant transition, right? Now, this thing about the future, let's see what it says. The future aspect before the present is executed restructures the past. I know this can be really confusing, but we know that at a subatomic level, there is no past, present, or future, right? It is a spatial instance. It is not temporal. So it can act, the subatomic instance can access any point of time whenever it wants, because it's always present for it. Okay. Now, when it says, the future aspect restructures the past before the present is executed. This is exactly like this. I think this is a really good phrase that summarizes what we have been doing since 2012, which is the solar consciousness anticipating itself, right? So these 13 years, this has been an anticipation of 13 years. What has been happening from the first time the reception of the signal happened till now is it's a restructuration of the past before the present is executed. What present? This present. Apparatus 507. This is the present that the solar consciousness anticipated itself 13 years in 2012 to prepare itself before this present is executed. So the future restructures the past before the present is executed. Right now, we are in the execution of that present. In 2012, we were in the restructuration of the past from the future aspect. Does that make sense?
I have to unmute. It's very interesting. I didn't see that like that. Thank you.
Is it more clear for you?
Yeah, more clear. Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So right now, the execution of that present, it's going to be a better quality of present now, because the past, the documents that we are standing on for this present to be executed are restructured, are improved, right? From that future aspect. So the execution of this present, hopefully, is going to have a better quality for that reason. But this is all the solar consciousness doing, anticipating itself, repairing the errors and the interferences and all these things in its code, so that this specific block in its code functions better, because of the codification it implies. That's going to be the execution that we're going to see. So it is the solar code improving all these things, right? So meaning that it nourishes the interpreter nourishes the interpreter, right? Nourishes it with what? With concepts. These concepts are going to nourish our interpreter so that our interpretations are online and are not based on the memories and are not based on the reactives or automatic interpretations of things that shouldn't be automatically interpreted. Now, these concepts nourishing our interpreters, we receive the signal, we process that signal, we make new interpretations, right? And then that is online. So the new logical circuit is applied. 2025, the recreation of the logical circuit. A new logical circuit, not the same logical circuit. So a lot of people that are not able to nourish their interpreter, they're just going to be repeating the same logical circuit until it gives out. And that's fine, you know, it's fine. It's what they want. It's what the state of evolution of their souls is. And that's fine. No problem with that, right? I only have to worry about me because this is a particular evolution. And I have to worry about the state, the instance of my soul, of evolution of my soul, the appetites of it, how my interpreter works, if my concepts are concrete and stable and good and clear and differentiated. If they are, then I can make really good interpretations about things and not take things personally, not take things emotionally, symbolically, speculation. No, I stay within my scope. I interpret what I can with with the resources I have, and the rest I leave it because it's not within my scope. If it's not within my scope, it doesn't need to be. But if I respect it, then maybe later it will be within my scope. Like if I have a desire for something to be within my scope, but it's not, I still have to respect it and be like, maybe later, maybe I can work towards it. Like, I don't know, these things with the numbers, right? In the logic. Oh, I don't understand it. What is it? Like, this is so confusing. Okay, it's not within my scope. That's fine. But I am interested in it. I want it to be within my scope. Okay, so I take note about that and I just leave it. I leave it there. I tell my double, I'm interested in that. I really would like to learn about that. Learn how to do that. Okay, and it's there. And maybe later, when I reach a certain maturity at another level, at an impersonal level, maybe I will be able to learn it. So staying within my limits doesn't mean that I'm going to stay there forever or that they're going to be the same limits forever. No, they're amplifiable. Limits are always amplifiable. Except that we have been educated in the wrong way, where sky is the limit, right? Push yourself to the limit. I mean, yeah, in a way, it's good to push yourself to the limit so you know where your limits are, but you shouldn't stay there. This is going to be harmful for you. So yeah, I hope that's clear, Gabby, with that part. That's a really good highlight.
Yeah, you highlighted it also already, but
Oh yeah.
yeah,
I
it's
didn't
clear.
remember
Thank
that.
you. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Because I think that really summarizes everything that has been going on since 2012 to now. It's like the perfect summary. Okay, so next paragraph from Marjolaine, we're gonna be going over it slowly like we did on the first one, okay? So it says, I remember when I first started receiving this instruction, I realized that code 54 was not respecting what parameter 54 in the solar system scale represents, which is to contain all the fragments between orbital 5 and orbital 4. Notice that she makes a separation between code and parameter, right? When she says code, she's going to be talking about the codes inside the planet on the third orbital of the solar system. That's when she says code. And that's going to be the code of every country, which is going to have a function and a place in the global function of the ionosphere, right? This is related to the wheat. That's why Alejandra talks so much of the wheat. It has to do with our global communication and the interconnection of these codes, of every particular code on Earth, right? That is why the wheat is so important. It has to do with the ionosphere and our interconnectivity. That is code 54, which is Argentina, as we all know. Now, parameter 54, what is that? That's going to be orbitals 5 and orbital 4. Alice says, and she's always said how the planet on the third orbital has been destroyed before. So this is like, we have come very close to the destruction of the third orbital before. We are there now, and it has been destroyed before. So all the fragments and particles from those explosions of the third planet and the third orbital remain inside the solar system. It is as like the memories are there, right? That's why code 54 always, I don't know if you've noticed, but it always has novelties. Like it is as if it takes from that parameter of the solar system, from all those failures in the third orbital, it takes from that, creates new things, like capitalizes the errors and creates improvements and novelties based from that, right? But this is a thing that has to do with the solar system, the parameter. Now, what Ale has said is, okay, let's continue. All those fragments contained there are precisely what we read within chaos to create new models of order, right? So, I don't know, the third planet and the third orbital has been destroyed. That's chaotic, right? It is not ordered anymore, because when there's a planet, all these elements are organized, they have an order, and it's functioning. When there's a planet, it's functioning. When it gets destroyed, the elements are there, but they are out of order, right? So it is as if code 54 has the possibility to take things from that parameter 54 to create new models of order. We can see that with Millet. He's not perfect, we know. He's a politician. No politician's ever going to be perfect, but he is bringing novelties and he's doing things differently at the level of geopolitics, right? But what Ale is saying, that before Millet, of course, Code 54 was in the middle of an era of corruption, meaning that it wasn't aligned with what the parameter 54 was providing as premises of what Code 54 should be doing, which is the administration of the model or the filter. The administration of the filter, right? Filter of what? 7, 8, 9. The filter is 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3, the bottom. The administration of the filter. Now imagine that. Of course, there's so much corruption there, because we know the solar code wasn't in its best place. So all these cosmic influences were like, this is a good code to corrupt whatever comes from the ionic area. We control the middle and we control what comes down. And then we take for ourselves whatever we want. That is the administration of the middle, the administration of the filter. Yes, Molly? Your microphone?
I meant to shut it off.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Oh, I'm just
Processing.
guessing.
Okay.
I don't have anything to say at the moment.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you did. Okay. Okay, so instead of creating new models of order, Code 54 was in the middle of an era of corruption, right? Okay, seeing this, I logically could not establish a foundation in Argentina. All the corruption. And that led me to Madagascar, right? Madagascar, the concept that we created in LGC about Madagascar was the cradle of the species, the cradle of the species, okay? That is what we can say about Madagascar. Because I needed to return or turn to an earlier level where what is founded aligns with the scale of the species. So she said earlier level because she couldn't do it from the clan or the personal. So moving back to the structure of the species. Remember that? Entorno, species, clan, personal. So she moved back a level because what needed to be founded or established needed to be at that level, needed to be aligned with the scale of the species. Okay, that earlier level later builds the clans, because a clan is a specific application of the species, right? Okay, but that's a different order, an order that comes after. Okay, a clan is a subsequent refinement. The clan is a refinement of the species that comes later. Okay, so next says, and yet from 2014 to 2024, we are already seeing that Code 54 is beginning to form membranes at its borders. We can see it in politics and geopolitics, right? So Alejandra did this establishment in Madagascar in 2014. 10 years later, we are seeing that the execution of that code, that future instance, reconfiguring the past so that the present could be executed with more quality, is happening now. So we're going to be seeing those executions now. Yeah, I know that's a lot. Is that better, Marjolaine? Or do you have any questions about that?
I have to reasoning this. I can hear what you say, but I feel that it has to digest more. I do understand it better, step by step. Yeah.
Okay.
It is quite
Okay.
interesting to test here about because now she's in Peru because of the topic documentation. Yeah.
You know, she created this enterprise. She talked about that as well. I don't know if it was in which one it was, but Nuevo Sol, and then she talked about the change in the coin from Nuevo Sol to Sol, and the dates and the metrics. She spoke a lot about that. So Nuevo Sol in Spanish is new sun, right? So that was the name of that enterprise that Alejandra had to create in Peru to be able to give base to the continuation of the events, because the economic structure of Argentina wasn't allowing many things to happen. So she had to do that in Peru, right? So all that has to do with that as well. But maybe in this whole paragraph, because the Madagascar thing is a little more detailed, but we could focus in the difference between parameter 54 and code 54. When she's talking about parameter, she's going to be talking about at the level of the solar system, which is of course a different hierarchy. Then when we're talking about code, we're talking about the telephonic codes of the countries inside the planet of the third orbital. That is going to be the difference, but they're interconnected, of course. Like every parameter inside the planet is going to be, of course, should be aligned with the parameter that has to do with the solar system and the functions of the planets according to the solar premises or adjustments or improvements. So we can focus on that difference. Okay. Next question from Gabby. Because if I interpret a situation according to the species, I get nourished from everything that has broken my personal octave. These things reconfigure the octave. In this question, I think Alejandra's talking about her separation from Darío, right? This whole situation has given us a lot of education, because she has explained this in many different ways along these years, because I think it happened in 2017, this first impact she had, where Darío had a relationship with another woman, and this was a very huge impact for Alejandra. for the reason that Alejandra was using Darío's resources at a very dense level, right? And she was interpreting those resources as her own. So this was a very big impact for her, which she couldn't make an interpretation of that situation from the level of the clan. She had to make an interpretation at the level of the species. So she could interpret and capitalize that situation. But she said her personal octave was broken, right? So that is a very huge impact for our personal octaves to break. But like we were saying earlier, if we do not have something that supports us when our personal octaves break, we're going to have a very hard time rebuilding that octave. Because if it broke, it means that it wasn't supporting the updates, right? So if it breaks, it's not that we're going to be able to just fix it. No, we have to rebuild it in a way that it includes all the new things that our entorno is changing, right? So that's what Ale did. Made the interpretation from the level of the species so that she could capitalize and rebuild that octave from a different place. But of course, she has the concepts to do that, right? And the maturity and the space-temporal structures to do that. And of course, we're on our way to be able to do that as well in our own, according to our own scopes. So that when
I
our
was
identity...
questioning how she did that to do it from the species.
You were questioning how?
Yeah, how she did that then.
Oh, well,
Going back.
I think that is very internal of her. You know, I don't know if she has explained it like how, just the what. Because since all of this happened in the internal axis of Alejandra, of course she tells the things how they happen, but now how she did them.
Yeah,
I don't know if you're right, I don't think she explained like the how, but the how, I would say it's the focus. Like if I am focused only on my personal, that's going to be really, really hard, or only in the clan, which is what socially the social octave reaches, like the maximum reach of the social is probably the clan. But with these concepts that we have been being formed in, now we know that there is more, that there is the frame of the species and there is a frame of the entorno, right? And the frame of the species, of course, has to do with the fact that we are, of course, all interconnected. We're all part of the same species. The morphic field, the interconnection, and more axiomatic concepts in relation to the species, so that she didn't take them personal. Understanding this from another level so that she could actually capitalize it, because this was happening at her personal level. So if something's happening to me at a personal level, I need to go to another level or another level that allows me to capitalize that situation. Because if I remain inside my personal, I'm not going to be able, it is like I cannot fix the problem from the same place where the problem is being generated. I have to move back 1 step or 2 steps, depending on what's going on. So in Alejandra's case with this situation, because she has clarified that a relationship, like a marriage or, a relationship is not a clan. It's a relationship with the species, right? Because I don't marry any of my family members. I marry someone from the species. So that's why our personal relationships with our partners are so important, because it is our connection with the species. It is the species getting 2 people together that one needs something from the other and one needs something from the other, and they complement each other. It's our connection to the species. That's why Ale says this was the place where she could position herself so she could capitalize the situation, right? But if we're not able to do that because we don't have the constructed concepts, and then we have a situation that happens in our personal lives and we don't have the concepts matured, I'm not going to be able to capitalize it, and I'm not going to be able to reconfigure the octave. I'm gonna be living with that broken octave all my life because I wasn't able to capitalize it. There's a lot there. She has been talking about this a lot, and there's so much more there, so much more with the whole Darío. Like, I wanted to make a document of Alejandra talking about the whole Darío process because it's very interesting and there's so much there to learn. Okay, so the next question from Gabby. Okay, 361, 356. The NO cardinality of the Ring of Fire. Okay, so you know she's talking about, okay, we have the 353, which is the center of the processor. We have 354 and then 357 to the left, right? In between 357 and 354, we have 356 and 355, right? That is the NO cardinality of the Ring of Fire. Now, what she's saying there is the 356 aligns with the 362 and the SE cardinality, right? The SE cardinality has 360, 361, 362, 363. Now, the NO cardinality aligns with the positions in the SE cardinality. That's what she's saying. So she's saying that the NO cardinality, the function of that in the Ring of Fire is to absorb all the things that were not integrated from the SE cardinality, which is the context, right? So it's always absorbing all these things and integrating them so that it can codify them in the mind, and that so the mind can provide the soma with the capacity to deal with whatever's happening in the context, right? So the Ring of Fire has to absorb what is in the SE cardinality, which is what it hadn't perceived before, right? Because the NO cardinality has to do with the observer. So it absorbs that and it starts to codify based on that. 8 years later, we have a new receiver, but it is a receiver that drinks precisely, she's saying 8 years later, I think from the establishment of Calendaria, right? Yes, from the establishment of Calendaria. 8 years later, we have a new receiver, but it is a receiver that drinks precisely from that which broke its octave. It is as if it goes integrating and capitalizing that. So it is what we were saying earlier, right? The thing is that if there's a breakage, if there's a reception of all these new things going on, I have no concepts, I have no grip on anything, like I cannot hold on to anything and go through these processes. Some people may not make it, some people may go crazy, some people may go very mystical, very symbolic, some people may even, commit suicide. Very, very dramatic things may be happening if I don't have, if I didn't focus these past years in growing internally. If I was just focused outside all the time, if I based my whole life on the Ro, then those are the people that are going to have a harder time, because right now it's about the Ri. Like Ale always says, the credit shifted from Ro to Ri, to the development of the Ri axis. And that's what's happening. People are sensing that. People that were used to, surviving a certain way based on the Ro, based on the credit on Ro, and things are just not functioning the way they're used to. But these things had to be constructed these past years. And if they didn't do it, it's going to be harder to do it on the go. They're going to have to, like, some people may have the opportunity to activate these things and start doing it online. But it's better to have anticipation, right? To be a little bit prepared for whatever's coming. Like another thing that Ale said, an important date in this year is April 28th. Did you guys see that part? Because April 28th this year, let's share that because I think that's really important. 2025 here. You guys can see that? So This is April 28th. This is day 118 in the table of elements, right? Now, this is another really important thing that we didn't talk about. We are, for the first time, routing the table of elements because last year we reconstructed the table, reconfigured the whole periodic table of elements. Like the whole board was reconfigured. And this year is the first time it's so beautifully synchronized. The first year of the apparatus 507 is the first year we're going to be going over and routing the table of elements after we reconfigured it last year. So this is just huge, right? And the thing with the 28th of April, Alice said, it has to do with the elements that were artificially created, right? It has to do with the denser elements on the table. So the 28th of April is day 118 of the year, which corresponds to Oganesón. And we know that Oganesón later turns into 119, which is Toganesón, which is a solar task. And then we go and begin with the promise, the lines of the promise, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But she said, I am anticipating in lap 3, I am anticipating what's going to happen in lap 8. So that when we get there, we are anticipated and knowing that we are going to be going through the denser elements of the table, right? So we don't know, this is not like an oracle or anything like that. It's just something that anticipates our antennas, our cones, our digital identities that work within the limits, right? Because of course these things fall onto our limits. So this is a task for the digital identity. And just the fact that we are observing this and reasoning this with everything that we did last year, we're reasoning this and our digital identity is like, okay, the date, okay. Density, the dense elements of the table, and the change from 118 to 119 is important. So we're anticipating our cones. And that's it. We don't have to do much more than that. So yeah, we finished early. Anybody want to say anything else? Sorry about that.
Sharp and efficient.
Yes, really nice. And I'm now like, oh, yes, it's really also great to listen to it again, this one.
Going over it, discussing
Yeah.
it. Mm-hmm.
That's brilliant. Brilliant.
Working for you, Denise, the video or to write the text like you did now?
For me, I prefer the text. The video is quicker. In that way, we could say it's better because it's quicker. But for me personally, I enjoy the text a lot more. The thing is that since the construction began, you know, I never have silence. So, and here the sun goes down around 6, so I get really sleepy. Like I get, it's really hard for me to work after 6 because, you know, just my circadian rhythm. And they get here really early, so like I can't do it really early. And then the only day they don't come, it's Sundays, and I usually am out of the house, so that's why. But I'm still gonna try to find space to do the videos. I know you guys enjoy them a lot. I do enjoy them too. If not, we're gonna continue with the text format until we have more stability over here in the territory.
It's
Great.
all good. All
Territory.
good. Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
good.
Okay, you guys, well, it's really good to see you. Happy lap 3, and I'll see you on
Friday.
February 14th on the, Friday,
Yes.
on the cycle meeting.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
you
Thank
guys.
you, Denise.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.